And we'll start with Sharon, and this question is on committee voting. So the committee process is one of the most important processes down when you're in Little Rock at the Capitol, and a lot of people don't know this, but not all committee votes are recorded. They do a voice vote. The committee chair just kind of can call it the way he hears it, and every now and then you'll get a roll call. What do you think about the committee voting process? Do you think all legislative votes should be recorded so the voters know how their representatives vote?
Can I answer in one word? Yes. It's almost appalling to think that you can just go into a committee and we can all just, whoever yells out the loudest is that's how the vote is going. If we all yell yay or we all yell nay, then it is. I am all for recording the committee votes. I serve on the Quorum Court now in Washington County. We record our votes, and I mean we're a county, so if it's good enough for a county, it's certainly good enough for our state, and we need to be recording those votes. So short answer is yes. Thank you, Paul.
I would also support that. I kind of had to do this already. Being on the education committee, we had a couple of members who wanted everything to be roll called anyway. So I think most of my votes, not all of my votes, were roll called in Little Rock anyways. And my other committee didn't meet all that much. I do think it's really appalling that we don't do recorded voting in committees. I saw examples in Little Rock of bills that were sent to certain committees knowing it's not going to be roll called, so we can let it die over there and no one will know, which one of you actually killed it. And I just think that's so wrong. We're elected to go down to Little Rock and vote and represent our constituents. And that's a way for people in Little Rock to hide from you and prevent you from holding them accountable. So I do support that, and I would love to see that happen starting as soon as possible.
The answer is yes, and here's why. My current representative, Sue Scott, voted against religious freedom in the Judiciary Committee and then voted for it on the floor. So talk about accountability. There's a perfect example. It's kind of along the lines of how do you best keep your representative accountable? Well, you become knowledgeable on their votes. And I don't think, thankfully there are articles and there are people who follow this kind of stuff and are willing to bring that to light on votes like Sue Scott voting against religious freedom, but we shouldn't have to rely on the cabin. We should be able to rely on concrete data and people who record it in the Capitol, and so the answer is yes.
Randy Alexander next.
No, I'm just kidding. Absolutely yes. I was very surprised when I got down there to see how few times there's actually a record of who voted what in committees. I have seen, as everybody down there has, a committee chair call a vote passed when clearly it didn't pass, and if they're not challenged on it, it just goes. I think we need to. We talk about accountability, but if you have the ability to hide how you vote, there is no accountability. And I think a roll call vote should be standard. I don't think we ought to even think about it. We should always have a roll call vote. And that's going to really show you where people are on this issue. People will kill something in committee to avoid having to vote on it on the House floor because it will be recorded there. And it's just gameplay, and we need to end it.
Okay, moving on. Our next question. And if you guys want to comment on that, you'll have a chance to later. Our next good government question has to do with general improvement funds. We're going to start with former State Representative Deborah Hobbs. So the general improvement fund is a taxpayer fund. Interesting thing is I guess last year there was a big news that Governor Asa Hutchinson's budget had removed general improvement spending, and then towards the end of the session it was added back in. What is your stance on general improvement funds, and should they should we keep them or should we end them? We'll start with Deborah.
Right, in case you do not know what general improvement funds are, that may be one of those terminologies you've heard and don't really know. And Randy can probably do a better job of explaining this than I can. But basically, when we set the state budget at the end of the fiscal year, if there's money within that budget that has not been spent, then that's considered a surplus. And that has been given general improvement fund terminology is what that's referred to. Typically, when that happens, like the governor may get half of that money to go into a fund to spend as he sees fit. The Senate typically gets half of what's left, and then it's divided among the senators, and then the other half is divided among the representatives. Like you, I was excited when I saw that at least they weren't going to have JIF money this year, because quite frankly, in looking ahead, funding private option, if that continues, which if many of us have our way, it will not. But if it does, there's still paydays coming, where we're going to have to pay those. I do believe it's, if it's a surplus, then we are taxing the public too much. That money should go back to the general public. And when I answered to Northwest Arkansas Council about this, to me, if you put it back into infrastructure, that is helping the taxpayers. I think that's giving it back to them, something they can see where the money's going. My last term, I voted against the line item budget for general improvement funding for that very reason, because I did not think we should be able to take it back to our districts and support grants to certain areas with that money. I felt like it needed to go back into the budget and back to the people.
Shannon Starr.
I agree with Deborah. I think that money should go back to the taxpayer and go back into to our choices and what we want to do with it. Because sometimes that money can just be used for things that are a little frivolous and not really that important. And there are really many things in our state that could use that funding, that surplus money. So I agree with Deborah. I think that it's up to the taxpayer, and that should be what we do with that money.
Charles Gaines.
I'll keep my answer short, but I understand the concept of having the fund. However, I would be in favor of returning it back to its rightful owners, who are the citizens. I just don't think it's appropriate to have a surplus every fiscal session. I just think there's a miss there. Our goal should be to have it as balanced as possible. So to answer your question, I would be against the charter.
Isaac Foley.
Thanks. I appreciate Debbie's kind of explanation of what GIF money is, because when I was initially told about it, someone described it as a legislator's re-election campaign coffers. Now, I know different people have different opinions on that, but that's just what I was told. So I've always had kind of a preconceived negative sort of association with the term general improvement funds. To Jennifer's point, I thought it was really interesting that we were talking about raising taxes on fuel when we had millions of dollars left over at the end of the session in general improvement funds. Because those infrastructure sort of things, be it roads or schools, I believe they are all things that benefit the general public. They're general improvement sort of things. And if I could quickly jump back to the question about committee votes, I don't think that's a partisan issue. It's not left or right. I think it's a character issue, and people should be held accountable for their votes.